stream where we are going to discuss, let me just make sure that this is visible, okay, where we are going to use this great piece by Emma Vast et al. To discuss the arms race in academic research. And what do I mean by an arms race in academic research? An arms race basically goes back to this idea of the Cold War, where the United States and what was formerly the USSR, were basically building more and more nuclear capacity. So the US built some nuclear bombs, Russia built some more, then the US felt threatened because Russia built more bombs and built more, so this like big snowball effect where it's becoming, where each country was just piling on weapons. And what does this have to do with academic research? Well, I would argue that if you look at papers published more recently, there is, in top journals, there is an increasing number of papers that are using more and more and more data. And, this has been going on for a while. So, for example, if you look at my own paper in MS Quarterly, it has a 15-month ethnography. If you look at earlier ethnographies, they would tend to be shorter, even in classical papers such as Steve Barley's 1984 ASQ piece. It was a 9-month ethnography with only a few days on site. Mine was 15 months with every day on the site, and so the data sets that you are seeing in top journals are increasingly bigger and increasingly more complex. And I think that this paper encapsulates it very nicely, because it also talks about one of the sources of this arms race, which is online data. Okay. So with online data, you're able to really go through huge. Let me pick up my notes. So you're really able to go through huge amounts of data, huge amounts of rich data, because these are people talking to one another online, and there are very sophisticated quantitative methods to extract information from this data. But again, you don't need to go to online data to see the arms race. Just look at, I remember a recent Gioia paper on ASQ that has basically 10 years worth of data. I'm preparing a paper based on around 300 interviews that I collected for 10 years, and I'm adding that to my ethnographic fieldwork of 15 months. So it's, the amount of data, the complexity of data that top journals are getting is increasing. And so what I want to talk to you about is how do you respond to this, right? And obviously, I have to make the caveat that it is still possible to publish with very little data. So, for example, I recently had a revise and resubmit at MS Quarterly with just around 20 interviews. Unfortunately, that paper was later rejected, but the complaints were not about the data. Now, having said this, I do think that there is a sort of a negative relationship between data and theory, where if you have more data, you can be a tad weaker on theory for two reasons. First, because the data itself will suggest you a nice theoretical contribution. If you have 15 months of observation, something interesting will happen. If you have 20 interviews, it is less likely or more difficult. Secondly, when reviewers are exposed to a lot of complex data, my sense is that they are more motivated, but they can also have more resources to help you more. So it is it is possible, but the burden on you as a theorist is much higher, and therefore the risk of rejection, first round, second round, whatever, is much higher as well. So what can you do? I would say that there are basically three strategies. The first one is basically to join the arms race. So just make sure that you collect a lot of data. The secret for this is to do this during your PhD. So spend as much of your PhD collecting data as you can, because you will have time to write after your PhD. You will not have time to collect rich data after your PhD. So really make your PhD about collecting amazing data. Also, what I've seen both at MIT and in the smaller universities I was in Portugal and now at IESEG is that good data gets a lot of traction in talks. And so, even if your theory is not crispy clean, data will get you a long way, and people will say, okay, the paper is not really good, but with this type of data, they will publish for sure. And I've definitely seen that as a director of research at IESEG and making hiring decisions. That's part of my hiring criteria. How good is the data that people are working with. And so even if the paper is not like amazing, I just trust co-authors and the review process to help them out with data. If their data is weak, they really need to shine theoretically. So collect a lot of data. If you're already, senior researcher like myself or mid-career where you have less opportunities to collect data, obviously you can work with PhD students to do this. What I have done myself, because I haven't been able to work with PhD students that much throughout my career, is I designed master's thesis so that I got a really nice data set. So, I have a video on that, on how I have a bunch of master's theses on what people do at work when they're not working. Or you can take advantage of, data that is in documents, and obviously online data is the shining star of these type of data, right? So, all of these for people are really busy and senior people, and nevertheless they were able to pull out this paper because this paper is using Twitter data. So there's still a lot of work in the analysis, but the data collection is far more straightforward than if they were doing an ethnography on the data that we are going to look at. Okay. Second, co-author for data. And this is something that I personally have done. So I've co-authored two papers. One is very good, is in the European Journal of Information Systems. The other is in a smaller journal. But in both of these papers, I was, basically my co-authors have pretty cool data. And so I just I was just doing the theory work for that paper. Okay, so my co-authors did spend a lot of time collecting this data, and I joined them at their request, but I did join them to help them with theory. So that is definitely something that you can keep in mind. We tend to try to collaborate with senior scholars, because of their sort of theoretical skills and publication skills. But really think about building a network and co-authoring with people for data. My co-author Nikki de Nuremberg, she had a lot of traction for my dissertation data, and we ended up publishing a piece in Neuroscience where she was the one playing the role of the lead theoretician. Let's say, okay? So co-authoring for data, that's the second strategy. Third strategy I want to show you on this article, which is still related to data, but not 100%, is what I call a shock and awe strategy for methods, okay? So not just the amount of data, but for methods. And what you'll see in this paper, in the method section of this paper that I'll just show you, is that, you know, there's a lot of data, but it's not like an amazing amount if you're thinking on Twitter data. But just the methods are so clever, and you know, and so I won't say complex, but multi-stepped, that you know, that this really impresses. Okay, so I'm going to show you a figure in this paper. So I kept the paper here so you could see the title. So the main title is social media affordances for connective action, and this is by Emmanuel Vast, Hani Safadi, Liette Lapointe, and Bogdan Negoita. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing all those names well. And so, but my name also, I'm super careful with names because my name is mispronounced all the time. But so, anyways. Good. So here's the method section, okay? And you're like, look at this and like, man, I mean, I don't know any of the other authors, but I do know Emma Vast personally, and I do follow her work. And, you know, she's really, really talented. And I think Emma is well known, but I do think that her popularity has not yet reached her skill level. I mean, Emma is really amazing. Been never fortunate enough to work with her, but I seen a bunch of her presentations and read a lot of her conference papers in a little bit of a rawer form, and this, you know, is really excellent pieces of work. So look at this, right? So first. So this is a mass quarterly publication, so very top publication. First, multi-methods study, and look at how thorough and clever they are, where they talk about reasons for following mixed methods and how their paper uses this, right? So really taking care to justify mixed methods. Second, like, look at this method section, okay? Now, notice that although this is a stylized representation of what they did for methods, it really respects the depth and complexity of multi-method studies with qualitative research. So you see there are like iterative processes where you go back and forth. You have more of a linear process here. And so you see, and you really see the feedback between the literature review and the data analysis. And here, you know, here's the meat of the sandwich, let's say, right? So you have this is a little bit in low res. I apologize for that. It's I guess a bad PDF. But here is clusters analysis. This is a quantitative method. Qualitative analysis then of the messages, and then motifs analysis, which again it's a quantitative method. So really, you know, complex in a nice way, really rich method section, very different from whatever method section we'll see, for example, in my papers, as you know, detailed as they are. So I can pull one of them. Okay, so I'll pull the method section in one of my papers, where you see, so I do have like all of these steps, but this is far more linear and sort of like structured. This obviously is a caricature of what I did, but it's the standard sort of like three-step coding analysis of grounded theory, etc. This is really far more complex, far more iterative, far richer, and really mixing that quantitative and qualitative research. So this is the third strategy. Okay. So overall, what's the takeaway from this video? The takeaway is that there is an arms race in qualitative research, at least in top journals. What does this mean? This means that you need more and more better and better data to publish at this level. There are advantages of this. If you have more and better data, reviewers will be way able, and I would say willing, to help you more than if your data is weaker. Okay? How can you overcome the arms race? Focus on collecting a lot of rich data. A lot of rich data. Your PhD should be to collect data. That's the purpose of your PhD, to collect amazing data. You can write later. You cannot collect data later. Second strategy, co-author with people that have amazing data. Look for people in conferences that have amazing data. Tell them about the frameworks that you have where their data could be applied. So for example, my paper with Nike de Nuremberg was on a data set from my ethnography that I wasn't using and that she found really appealing for her research on ethics. So it was a win-win situation. Finally, if you don't have amazing data, then try to do as much as you can with your method section. Bring qualitative and quantitative research as much as you can. I talked in a previous video about how to increase the N in your qualitative data after you collected it. So take a look again at that video and think about how you can bring quantitative analysis here. Okay. To wrap up, can you publish with small data sets in top journals? Yes, you can. I just gave you an example of an R that I got in MS Quarterly with just over 20 interviews. But the burden on your theoretical skills will be much higher. Rejections will be more likely, and reviewers will struggle more to help you. Okay, so I hope this video was useful and that you really can use this to inform your data collection and who and how you write with. Thanks so much. Have a good one.